Thanks for joining us on the newspaper review this morning. Now we are joined virtually with our guest, Emeka Nwatu, a public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us on the newspaper review this morning.
Yeah, good morning, Esther. Good morning, Nigerians. Thanks for having me.
Yes, now let's get into the papers. The story I read before calling you this morning is connected to ASU. We have ASU Films as federal government declares strike illegal. Let's talk about industrial actions, especially with ASU. The side effects first and then the way forward. Please, before you answer, I'd like you to note that the federal government is stating that they are still negotiating, they are renegotiating before the industrial action began. And so they are stating that there's a negotiation going on, a renegotiation going on. Why are you taking the decision before the end of the renegotiation? So let's look at that before we get into the effects and the way forward.
Okay, so negotiations and renegotiations between the Nigerian government and ASU has always been sustained, has always gone forth and back and forth for a long time. So that is something that we are used to so much. I mean, this particular system, a whole lot of us pass through this system, and so we are used to that narrative as to that the government has entered a new memorandum of agreement or memorandum of understanding, and they are reviewing it and all of this. See, my dear, I want you to understand that each time there is an agreement or each time there is a plot to negotiate, ASU doesn't just come. There is usually a tripartite committee, that everyone's interest is being tabled. I mean, on the part of the government, the labor union, and all other stakeholders. So everybody come and discuss, and then they take up a position, and that position usually is being agreed by all that it will be enforced.
Okay.
You understand? Okay. So I think that there is so much politicizing, there is so much insincerity on the part of people who have entered an agreement and they are not willing to honor the agreement. I know that you can say that you want to implement it systematically, not coming back to say you want to review or you want to. So that's insincerity, and that's not how a government like this, a competent government should run, because this has to do with the youths, which I am in that constituency. So I believe that the Nigerian government is not doing what they should do so much, and it gives nothing but ASU that leeway to begin to use their own medium or means to implement it. I mean, when you push someone to the wall, you beat a baby, you keep beating a child, and you tell the child not to cry, So I think I would have appreciated it more if there is a plan to implement, like they are implementing already. That action plan, not agreements.
Okay.
Now, we should move beyond agreements and real life actions.
Let me butt in here, talking about real life actions and implementing an action plan. Even if the government says this is what we are going to do and an action plan is written out and promises are made, is it enough reason? Do you think it's enough to stop? Because I'm asking this question at the end of the day to look at the way forward. We've talked about the side effects. The youths are affected. National Association of Nigerian Students mentioned recently that they would protest and, make their voices heard. Now let's look at the way forward. Do you think that this action plan from the ASU, from the federal government to ASU, if stated clearly and probably not implemented at the end of the day, is it going to stop ASU from making another move, or is it going to paralyze the system? What is the way forward? Let's get to the question.
Okay, so some people have canvassed that this hassle thing would not just end all of a sudden, because uh, the, the government of Nigeria would always, in their character, not want to enforce agreements. So I am of the opinion that ASU should, or universities should be made autonomous to
Okay.
some extent. To some extent, should be made autonomous, and then the federal government should just continue to regulate and provide uh, certain counterpart fundings.
Okay.
Because if they continue to rely on the federal government, this particular federal government, or federal governments in the past, have not prioritized education. So universities should begin to think on how to get external fundings. I mean, if you look at the way education is run overseas, you will notice that even uh, even alumni, even little uh, great bodies
Uh-huh.
from both locally and international fund education.
Okay.
So I think we need to begin to have an
Perspective.
an international perspective as to how education is driven in Nigeria. I will tell you that I have some of my friends who were just opportune to get scholarships overseas, and they got this by the interventions of just their alumni trust fund. Bodies that just have that interest to advance the educational goals of young people across the world, because that's how to bring style, that's how to bring innovation into education. But this traditional way of, or this feeding bottle system that we keep running to the National Assembly, or to the federal government, or to the minister, to say, bring in papers and say this is an agreement you entered. So it will not be sustainable. Yes, I understand that somehow it would affect the cost, or the cost of education.
Exactly. I was just going to
Yes,
get into that. I was going to
but
get into that.
there
Sorry
will be
to.
there will be a regulation.
Yes, I
There,
would like to
there
go
will be
to that before you even get into the regulation part, to state that asking Nigerian university anonymity in Nigerian universities, would it not be abused when it not just when it has to do with the cost of education now? Because I can say that for some Nigerians watching, when they had the opportunity to go to the university, they didn't pay so much in terms of school fees,
okay.
especially for federal universities. State universities are still on the high side, I must say. There are state universities that are paying so much, you can't imagine how much they are paying. So don't you think that it's going to affect those that have not, whose income are low, when it has to do with um, being autonomous? Because if you don't have the means to go to school, when it
Okay.
becomes high, when the fees are not affordable anymore, it might affect those who have access to education right now. So don't you think it would affect the way universities choose to regulate their school fees and their tuition fees and whatever the students have to pay to be able to go through this system?
Yeah, let me just take for instance the telecoms, the,
Okay.
the operators.
Uh-huh.
So you will see that there is a particular agency, say for instance the Nigerian Communication Commission, and all of the consumer regulators,
Yep.
that ensures that there is a minimum bench standard for the telecom of users and its effects. So that itself, that system can also be made applicable for the universities in Nigeria. I mean, we know that we have state universities, like universities owned by the government, So, but these universities should begin to operate like in a commercial system, because they've not yet commercialized the university.
Okay.
Because that is why everybody feels like if it is not coming from Abuja, it should not run. But I am still of the opinion that
Okay.
federal government should enforce should implement the agreements they've entered,
Okay.
because we have started it that way. It should continue. This is a law-abiding government, So when you keep to your word, you should be very honorable to enforce it. You understand? So my positions are just moving forward. But as it is now, what should be done and should be done appropriately, in the interest of the young persons. And then we as Nigerians, we should begin to get that orientation as to the kind of people we should enthrone into our public spaces. Because let me tell you, if you spend, they don't know that the billions you're spending on insecurity should have been, it should have just been transmitted into the educational sector, and it would reduce all of the insecurity challenges that we have. Because if you train Nigerian youth, they won't take up arms. If you train them, you give them, you empower them, you give them skills, nobody would want to go to the streets. And so why spending billions to fight insecurity and then just paying minute sum, as capital votes for educational system? So if most of these schools tell you the votes that they receive as interventions from federal government, it can't take you anywhere. It can't take you anywhere. So I want to see that turnaround, that shift, in a government that will come on board and tell Nigerians that this is our priority. Our priorities should not be insecurity.
Okay.
Our priorities should be education, and education. Because if people are educated, they will not take up arms.
Well, in a country where insecurity prevails, education might not be able to take place. I have to put that to you. If it's not a peaceful state, education might not just cross people's minds. Everybody will want to stay alive first. And even talking about staying alive, I'd like us to connect to the scarcity, the petrol scarcity that is happening right now. And I'd like to ask you that where you are at the moment, what does it feel like? Because the headline this morning is talking about that scarcity paralyzing states. So what does it feel like in terms of transportation and the commercial activities where you are at the moment? A lot of states are complaining that the cost of fuel, petrol per liter has gone up, but it is also affecting the cost of transportation and the cost of goods and services. So what is it like where you are calling us from?
Well, it's not different from, I'm in Nigeria, and you will know that as we speak, there is panic with respect to the quality of fuel or PMS that service stations sell now. So that on itself has brought about a scarcity a real scarcity. So what the implication is that people are very skeptical as to the kind of fuel that they buy, and it has brought about inflation in the cost. Like there's a jack up in the cost of the product. So, and you know that fuel affects everything, like transportation and movement of goods and services.
Yes.
So that has gone up, unfortunately, but why did we even get to this point? Why did we have to uh, see ourselves in a situation whereby we will be having issues as to fuels that are unacceptable, or fuels that affect the vehicles, or affect the Nigerians and their cars and all of that. So that is not what we perceive, or what we desire.
Okay.
So things has gone up. Things obviously has been affected. I mean, normally a distance that I could have just gone for a particular figure has increased over like 200% increase.
Wow.
So yes, I mean, if you want to use the public transportation, so it has affected things. Even not just goods, normal goods, like things you get on for a regular price, it has been affected. And this is not taxes now. This is because of the challenges of moving it from one place to the other. So that is the situation now. We have toxic fuel imported into Nigerians, and it has brought about hardship and unbearable conditions. So we may like to interrogate, why did we get there? What brought about this? What were the regulators doing? Why should we have a situation? This is like black market purchase. I mean, we have fuels, petrol that were blended with methanol in excess quantities. So it is not really acceptable, and disingenuous to our very fragile economy and to the generality of the Nigerian state. So I would say that on the part of the government, I heard they apologize for that particular product that was brought into the country, but it shouldn't just go beyond just apologies, because for us to clean up the mess, and for us to be able to identify this culprit, we must see that those people who had a stake in this incompetence or in these malpractices should be brought to book, because at the end of the day, Nigerians will still suffer for it. Now they are saying that they need an extra 200 or something billion to be able to clean up the mess. You see that Nigerians always have a way of paying for the incompetencies of a few persons within our places of trust. So that we will not accept. We will not accept. We are not going to pay for the incompetence of a few persons. So those people should take responsibility.
Okay.
And then I know that Nigerians are desirous to know that this on itself is a bad omen that has happened, because I mean, if you're saying you want to clean up the fuel, what about the cars that have been affected by this manifest incompetency that we have in governance? So I think that's more like a wasteful attempt, and just to continue to exploit Nigerians and improve the lifestyle of most of our leaders at the detriment of other Nigerians. And then it goes to say that, why do we even continue to import toxic fuel?
That's a conversation for another day. Why do we even? That's another conversation for another day.
So you see that the quality of those fuels are more like the regular or local bunkering fuels. I mean, what happens to our modular refinery?
Exactly. Exactly. So the question on the lips of a lot of Nigerians. But I mean, since we have not had the answers at this point in time, it looks like we're going to depend on that.
But I appreciate them. I appreciate them for owning up, but it shouldn't just be mere owning up. I mean, people who are fingered in this
Mm-hmm.
should to take responsibility, and there should be a price to be paid for that those recklessness. I mean,
Mm.
because if you see that a lot of vehicles has been damaged, you know, so coming under the pretense of cleaning up the poisonous fuel, you know, would not on its way on the longer go, you know, clean up those cars. I mean, are they saying that they want to share those? They want to find a way of reaching out to Nigerians, you know, and to give them palliatives for their cars that has
Uh,
been broken
um,
down. So. The conversations must continue.
yes, it
We must
will.
have it. We must have a better energy system, and
Yes, it will.
this even we should begin to have a long-term plan on how we have a transition from these regular vehicles to then have a conversion, because
Mm-hmm.
fossil fuels are not even how global economies run
Yeah.
transportation anymore. So we should when they had a plan, the
Mm-hmm.
the 2025 plan, I did not see that energy mix goal in that plan.
Mr. Emeka,
You know, so
Emeka Watu, because of our time, I would like that we leave that conversation for another day, especially when you talk about clean energy. Clean energy is such that it is now a conversation that we cannot avoid. We cannot avoid anymore. But
okay.
I'm afraid this is where we have to call it a wrap on the conversation. Thank you for joining us on the newspaper review this morning.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Nigerians, for having me.